Hello and welcome to the Nintendo Switch Online Game Club, the show where we play through the games available on Nintendo's various NSO apps completely at random. I'm your host, Derrick Bittner, and in this episode, I'm joined once again by the Golden Bolt, who last played F-Zero X. How you doing, Kevin?
You remember that more than I do. I'm not going to lie. I was trying to think of the last one I was on. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I for some reason, it sticks out in my mind, for mostly what everybody's played so far. Just like with our other guest, Moriarty, also returning, who last played Mario's Picross. How you doing, Moriarty?
Every day's a holiday. How
You
are
got
you?
Picross?
I
How
did.
dare
And
you?
it was a lot of fun, actually. I think I was the only one who super enjoyed it. It's funny because I'm actually playing a nonogram on my phone as we speak. So
That's amazing.
That.
Yeah, he
that.
was with Gareth, and Gareth had, I think it was with Gareth, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Not a fan. Gareth was not a fan. I like Picross, but it's just one of those.
They use the metric system where he's from, so I get he doesn't understand numbers.
That makes
It's
sense.
fair,
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
My whole issue with it was it's called Mario's Picross, but there's no
Yep.
Mario shapes. It's just generic stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
where's the
I played that
personality?
way back when the NES and SNES Online had started, just because I was like looking for something like a Picross, and I went through and like I had the same problem where it was just regular Picross, but I played that whole thing all the way through. That was my like sleep game.
Oh, nice. Well, as you're both likely aware, there are now over 200 games across the NSO, and while some are widely known like Super Mario Bros. And Zelda, there are some odd picks that could be hidden gems. We honestly don't know. So what we do is enter all those games into a randomizer, pick one, and then give our initial thoughts. And this week, the Wheel of Games has chosen Sin and Punishment for the Nintendo 64. What is our experience with this game? Moriarty, let's start with you.
Zero experience
Really?
with this game. I've never played it. I know what it is in that I've seen it, but I don't think I've even seen gameplay of it. I've just seen like the rail shooter icons on a screen.
Magazine
you know what I mean?
screenshots.
Yeah, exactly. I have no idea about this game at all.
Yeah. What about you, Kevin? What's your history with Sin and Punishment, if any?
I think I have it on my shelf over there. I went through an N64 collection kick when I was poor, because that's what you do with money when you're poor is you waste it. And so I think I have it somewhere. I did play a little bit of it at that point, but I think that was also right around when did it come to the Wii U store? I think it did.
I think so, yes.
Or if it wasn't that one, it was the Wii sequel that came to the Wii U store. Either way, I have that whichever version as well, and I played a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But I never got super far. I just know it as one of those YouTube games that all the YouTubers would talk about as we need to bring this over.
Yeah, exactly.
One of those. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my thing. I would see it on websites and magazines about like, why didn't Nintendo bring this over? It's entirely in English, even though it's Japanese exclusive. So when it finally happened back on the Wii Virtual Console, it was a big deal, and I picked it up and I enjoyed it. But one thing I remember about this game, and it's something I have to struggle with once again. This thing is awkward as hell to control as far as like its control method, and playing it on something other than an N64 controller.
Oh God, yeah.
Which I do not have. I think that's going to be a little odd.
Yeah.
I don't know. I forget exactly how the controls are set up for it, but I remember it being extremely awkward, despite the fact that it is just a shooter. It's a kind of almost a railgun shooter. Not quite. You're constantly going through. You move your character around. It's a shoot 'em up basically.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong again. I'm not super versed in the N64 section of the online service. I have it. I play Mario Party on it, but they have full remap of controls, right? Or full-ish, outside of like the right stick.
No.
Oh.
Technically, yes. You have to go into the Switch
That's right.
control, the
I remember
Switch
now.
section. That's not something that's just native to the NSO. You have to go into your Switch itself and change it around.
I think I mixed up what people said should be the case, because that's common sense and what is the case.
Yeah, that remapping and manuals would be really nice to have on the NSO. It's something they don't though. It's Very weird.
That's fun.
It's one of those weird control schemes where I'm looking at the wiki here and I didn't even realize this, where the character can be controlled by a single player or cooperatively between two players, where one controls the movement and the other one's it's like shooting the enemies.
Ooh, I want to use the monster controller people would fuse with the GoldenEye / Star Wars Episode 1 racer. I want that monster. Play it by myself. I'll do that.
Oh no.
That'd be
Oh
great.
no. Oh, so this is what makes it. Oh, this is going to be very awkward. So here's why it's a little weird. It supports control schemes for either left or right-handed players, which might be the saving grace here. But your character movement is either handled by either the D-pad and the C buttons on the C buttons on the N64 controller. And the analog stick is used to control the reticle. So your analog stick is controlling the reticle, while either the C buttons or D-pad is how you move around.
That's ringing a bell from when I remember playing it briefly on Wii U, which I think did have remap. So why doesn't the Switch have? But whatever. Anyway, never question what any of these companies do. I know, but yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't always make sense. But so I guess in my case, this will be a twin stick shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah, which honestly might be better. Like it
Could
might
be.
work out better for it in this game's case,
Maybe.
or
I'm
drastically worse.
curious.
It
Yeah.
could go either way.
We'll find out. But
I'm
yeah,
excited.
for this is a game developed by Treasure, though. I don't know if this is the first game Treasure put out with Nintendo, but it certainly sticks out, and even got a sequel years later, which was quite fun on the Wii. So
It was perfect for the Wii, from what I recall. I mean, like that's the exact kind of game you want on the Wii.
yeah, exactly. Looks like this is their third game on the N64. The first one was actually Mischief Makers. Then there was Bangai-O, which also came out on the Dreamcast, and then Sin and Punishment. But this was their first 3D game.
They just made all the sleeper hits.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, they even did Alien Soldier back in the day, right? So like, they did the Ikaruga, right? Like they've been involved in a lot of these games. So
Oh, yeah.
like, yeah, they've done a lot of those.
They've done a lot of shooters over the years, and pretty much all of them are just considered, classics at this point. Everybody loves it, and then they just sort of disappeared back in 2014, and hasn't really done anything since, which is a real shame because they're such a storied developer.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how long this game is, but I know it's not a long one. Like it's a rail shooter. It's not going to take you that long.
Yeah, I feel like it's in the couple hour range, like three-ish, 4-ish.
3 or 4 hours feels right. Yeah.
Yeah. 2 to 4 hours it looks like. So
Okay.
Nothing too intense, but I'm sure the difficulty is going to be high, but that's what save states are for.
Yeah.
I love save states. I love that we got over that argument years ago of people being like, if you use rewind or save states, you're a baby. I don't care. Call me a baby. I want to have fun.
Right? Yeah.
I-
I need to play a game.
I was playing. This isn't a Nintendo game club, but Sony's been putting out a lot of their classics on the PS4 and 5 now, and they put out the first Ratchet and Clank game as a classic, and it's the worst one. So I had to use a lot of rewind for that because I wasn't going to fight the final boss that can kill you in 2 hits with any of his attacks, or the second to final boss where there's like a 2-minute cutscene you have to watch essentially, but it's like a playable section you have to do when you respawn. And I was like, no, I'm just gonna rewind.
Well,
And the rewind is so slick too.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm actually impressed that they do have rewind, because that's one thing N64. Every other console on the NSO has rewind except N64.
That was what I was very impressed by with the company. I forget their name. I just was looking at an email from them because I'm trying to get them for an interview to talk about how they did it. But it was a group of people that they worked on the old PS4, PS2 games a while back, like the really weird that were like kind of native ports, but they were caking in an emulator. It's a whole thing. But as far as I recall, they're like one of the only ones that have been able to do it on like PS2, PSP, that have like a really long rewind buffer too. It's honestly weirdly impressive for anything that Sony does, because they usually don't do anything cool anymore. So,
Yeah, that's Ain't that the truth? I mean, I just imagine with that rewind or even just save states being super useful and size matters for that one boss we have to just run through the cornfield.
That's the exact one I was talking about. I had 1 HP, but I realized I got to the that cutscene with 1 HP, and I was like, well, I'm halfway through the cutscene. I'm not gonna go die and go back, so I'm just gonna rewind until I win. And I was doing it on stream, and the whole chat was like, "Yeah, please God, don't just
make us
cheat.
suffer."
We don't care." And if chat's saying that, that's how bad that gets. So
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Anything else you guys want to say about Sin and Punishment? Any hopes, expectations, things like that?
This is going to convince me to finally buy a proper Pro controller, I think. I have not had a good Pro controller. I've had a bunch of third-party ones that have kind of been bad, and I've been meaning to go get one that'll work. So I think this is going to be the impetus for that.
Yeah, you were talking about that a while ago. Like we had sent you some links.
Yeah.
We had too many games. We were looking at some.
Yeah.
It's hard out there.
I
I'm
know.
excited. I want to finally beat this game. It's always on my list of, like
Same.
one day I'll get to it games, and then my Switch stays getting dusty, and I feel bad.
Yeah, that's what happened to me with this one. It was like this is cool. This is neat. I barely played it.
Yeah.
It's like, but I have it. That's the important part. I have it.
Yeah.
At least on the Wii. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This just seems like a nice action game, quick and easy. See what it's all about. I don't know. I'm hopeful. I'm like, one of the previous games I had on the NSO is Light Crusader, which is Treasure doing a isometric action RPG, which was actually surprisingly fun.
Yeah.
That was on the Genesis. So that was a good time. So them being in their wheelhouse of a shooter, yeah, I'll take that. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. But with that all said, we're going to take the next week to play some Sin and Punishment. But of course, we'll be right back very soon to give our thoughts for all of you. So until then, everyone, see you soon.
信じたい仲間を信じたい自分を信じたい
敵を倒し未来を開け銃と剣で戦うアクションシューティング任天堂64罪と罰星の継承者
And we're back after a week of playing Sin and Punishment for the Nintendo 64, considered one of the gems of the N64 library. But what did you think, Moriarty? How did you enjoy Sin and Punishment this week?
You know, I have a lot of good thoughts about it and a couple of bad thoughts about it. And I think that maybe this is because I'm not, a huge fan of the game, so I don't have this sort of like great nostalgia for it. But I enjoyed, I want to say like 85% of it, and then 15% of it was not the best. And all of that part that I didn't like very much, I think I can kind of toss out very easily. So, for example, let's just start with the worst part of this. The story. The story is completely incomprehensible. I think I know what happened at some parts. Like,
It's
there are
okay.
moments.
We had an actual child actress say the word "damn," so it was all worth it. I don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah, I remember thinking at that exact moment, because I was playing it on the couch with my partner, and I was sitting here and I was like, boy, if I was a kid, that moment right there where she goes, "Damn," would have just got me. It would have been the edgiest stuff. I would have been so happy with that.
It is, yeah. I got things to say about that too. But what about you, Kevin? How'd you feel about it?
So I really enjoyed it. I went in from a perhaps not a unique perspective, but I didn't go in prepared for the controls. I didn't look anything up beforehand. I went in completely blind. And I forgot the N64's Pro Controller mapped controls. So at first I was like, oh, this works really well because the face buttons are all the C buttons. And then I realized that it's only when you're holding the trigger to shoot that the face buttons are C buttons. Otherwise, the A button is A, which is the change from auto aim that I think does less damage to regular aim, which does more damage. So there were just times where I was trying to bumper jump with the left bumper, shoot with the right trigger, while also moving so that I don't stop and then forget to do one of those things and accidentally switch my aiming and screw myself up. And that messed me up quite a bit, along with also having to stop shooting to parry because the parry button is also the shoot button. But once I got used to that jank for specifically this version of the game, I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. It was a little too bullet helly for my tastes at points. And the only reason I say that is that afterwards I looked up a little bit about the game that just to get myself reacquainted with some of the behind the scenes stuff. And so did Nintendo. They thought it was too much. And the producer at Nintendo said, hey, this is like, there's a lot going on here. And then Treasure said, yeah, if you're not good enough, maybe you shouldn't be supervising our game. They literally said skill issue to the Nintendo representative. And I died when I read that.
That is amazing. I mean, to be fair, I decided to play it on easy first because I didn't think it was going to be that, long of a game. And it's like, okay, we'll just see what easy is like. And I was like, okay, I was expecting it to just sort of have one of those like cutoffs. Like, you got to this part. If you want to see the rest, to be continued. Because a lot of games did that back in the day. But no, you get the entire story that way. Apparently, I did play through a little bit more on normal. And I will say, I almost do recommend, like, if you plan on playing this multiple times, to start on easy and work your way up. Because when you went to normal, I was used to the controls at that point, and I had a streak going where I got through I didn't die until I got to the second playable character, and was able to just keep it up on normal mode after playing through easy. So I do think it's one of those things where, it's a skill issue. You got to build it up. But I'm in agreement with both of you. The game's a lot of fun. It just takes a little bit to get used to because I did go through the tutorial and slowly get a handle of what I needed to do because I honestly thought it was going to be twin stick. It was not twin stick. It's move with the D-pad for me. Aim. Wait. Oh God, I'm forgetting already because it's one of those things. I got a controller in my hand. Move with the D-pad. Aim with the right. No.
Aim with either analog stick. You can choose.
So I ended up doing aim with the right analog stick, move with the D-pad because there's only strafe, so it was back and forth. There's only one way or the other. Shoot with the ZL button, so left trigger. Jump with R, and then of course the A to switch. So I never had the issue with the same issue as you with A, but I think the idea was is I also looked at behind the scenes stuff, and Treasure specifically said they noticed everybody was using the analog and C button setup for the N64 controller, and they wanted people to use the D-pad. They were like, we wanted to be different and do it that way. So that's why that's why it's that you'd use the D-pad to strafe and the analog stick to aim and have the trigger and all that, which I feel like having the trigger behind your aiming might throw me a little bit more. So I might have actually ended up, I didn't get a chance to test it, but I feel like the Pro Controller way might have been a little bit more easy to pick up.
It gives you the option at least because you have a trigger on either hand. Like I know there was the side scrolling level, I think was 3-2, because there were 3 worlds in the game, 3 levels each. And I think it was 3-2 was an actual proper side scroller type level, which was very different than the rest of the game, which is mostly auto shooter. And so for that one, I switched my controls because I was like, well, I can move with the D-pad then and aim with the right stick because this feels normal. But I had already started the rest of the game before that, outside of a couple times where I got stuck. I was already kind of ingrained into, well, I just have to keep moving so that I don't accidentally press A.
Right.
Because of the right trigger stuff, which was fine. I got used to it. Once I realized what was happening, I got over it. But I went back and forth, and I really liked that you have the option on a proper N64 controller that you could go back and forth. I think that's a really cool thing outside of, I guess, the A button. I don't know how you'd like hot swap to the other thing and press A if you wanted to switch to auto aim, because sometimes you have to. Like there are some fights where auto aim is like.
I actually stayed in that throughout the whole game. I never changed to a manual, not a single time.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I never found that was valuable. Yeah, it doesn't do a little bit less damage or whatever.
Yeah.
But I didn't see that was a super valuable thing to play because you could just flick from enemy to enemy. It was faster and more responsive for me.
That's fair.
There was one section, but I before I get into that, how did you feel about the controls overall, Moriarty?
I thought they were fine, right? I really did. I ended up with a kind of a, I don't know, a skewed claw hold on my controller. I did end up getting a pro controller for this, and using the D-pad to move, and then just kind of using your right two triggers to do your jump and shoot, and I was fine. It was fine. It was a perfectly acceptable thing. I didn't find it to be particularly difficult, but again, maybe it's because I didn't use the manual and I was just flicking from enemy to enemy. I found it to be responsive and enjoyable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, the manual didn't give me trouble until really at all. Actually, like I the only time I switched to the auto was for the blob boss fight in the train, the level that goes for like 40 different identical train rooms.
Yeah.
got real No More Heroes vibes from that one, if you know that one train level. But that blob fight, you have to specifically hit like one part of the blob to destroy the arm that has a certain laser. And that one, I was like, okay, I need to auto aim on that one, because I couldn't, for some reason, I would just get like one pixel to the right and I'd hit the other blob every time. But otherwise, like, I think it was there's a fight where there's a lot of weird fights in this game, which I know, understatement.
I loved it.
But there's one where it's very, very like over the top. You're fighting a meteor bomb going down to this giant mech that if you don't destroy it in time, it will kill you. You just lose. With auto aim, I couldn't get it done.
No,
because I had auto aim in that one, and I realized how much the difference was between like the regular reticle damage and the auto aim damage. And then even then, I was like, oh, it's also close enough that I have to slash it like 5 times to kill it.
Yeah,
because
that was the hardest. Like, I died the most times doing that meteor.
It was the one time I actually used a save state, because I got plenty of continues on easy mode, so I didn't have to worry about it. But yeah, during that section, I'm like, oh good God, you want to use auto aim because it tracks it so you can shoot it more often, but it's such a short sequence that you need to get that damage on there, because one time I had 1 health left and I still died. It just wasn't soon enough. So the fact that you pulled it off, Moriarty, kudos, because I could not honestly do that.
It took a few tries, but yeah, I did eventually get it. Speaking about the levels, though, boy, some very cool levels that are super unique feeling even today, right? Like, I'm not going to suggest that I've played all the rail shooters in the world by any means, but there are some moments in this that managed to make me say, I have never seen that before. There's lots of experiments, lots of bold ambition, right? Like, I think that's the real term for this game. If I were to like kind of encapsulate it in a scene, this is ambitious, right? It doesn't always land. The side-scrolling segment at the end that Kevin mentioned is perhaps an experimentation that doesn't hit all the same highs, but it's certainly not stale. Right, the aircraft carrier level is an example.
That was wild.
That was good,
working really well.
It was like 20 minutes, not 20 minutes, but like I had died a couple times on some bosses, and so about 20 minutes of game time into that level, I was like, man, we're still on this single piece of debris just spinning forever in air. Like, this is incredible.
And it was super enjoyable, right? And all of it, the whole thing, it feels, again, ambitious. Even the tutorial that you mentioned a minute ago is one of the better tutorials I've played in a video game, if I really think about it, right? It covered everything, and at the end, I knew how to play the game. You can't ask for a better tutorial. And I went into it, with a new controller and a game that I'd never played before, and I managed to come out of that tutorial and play through the whole game pretty successfully without a whole lot of changes. I think that's the definition of a great tutorial.
Yeah, absolutely. I like, it felt like it went on a little long at points, but for the most part, they made sure you had it down before you moved on. And by the end of the game, I was just thinking, like, this is just spectacle of the game. Like, I can barely comprehend what's going on in the story until like towards the very end, where it's like I started picking up pieces about what might be going on. kind of
I realized there's an Earth we're fighting.
That is a great part. That I will say that was a surprise, that the final boss is just a fake Earth that you have to destroy.
How did we not have anyone? Everyone mentioned Ikaruga at the end of Sonic Frontiers. How did no one mention this game?
Right?
How did I miss it? That they
Not
didn't?
enough people played it, I guess. It's treasure. They're shooter
fair.
kings. Like that's the thing. Like it's not a very long game, but no two sections are the same. Like
No.
they find a way to constantly shift what you're doing. It's run and gun. It's you in place while you just dodge. It's you doing a side scroller. You're sometimes a giant guy. It's all over the place. And I think that parry move is a great addition. It gives a little bit more context than just, well, they're up to me, so I can't really do much. It's not just a defense mechanic. You can do major damage by parrying certain projectiles back at enemies, and it'll go to where your reticle is, which I'm sure was really helpful for you, Moriarty. But sometimes I had him go off into the distance and like, oh right, I have to actually aim this thing.
No, I did not do that aiming. No. You mentioned how there's all these different sort of set pieces and stuff. One of the thoughts that went through my brain as I was playing this, and maybe you guys had sort of a similar feeling, was that if this game were to be shortened up a little bit, and I know it's already only an hour and a half, 2 hours or whatever to get through, but if you were to shorten it up, I think this would be the best-selling game at a Dave and Buster's, right? Like this is the thing that you would sit in and you would play with your friends. It's just that kind of really good rail shooter experience. And there were moments where it really is just kind of wild, right? How good it felt to play this game. And this is perhaps a wild comparison, but a good one that I found at one point going, this reminds me of Armored Core. And that's a good comparison. Like obviously not quite the same, but it was just that one moment where I was like, oh, this is like Armored Core. That's great. That's so good.
The one thing I really loved about this game is that it opens with like the most normal on-foot shooter, like Space Harrier type of level. And that's like a great way to get your bearings and kind of be like, oh, this is what this game is going to be. And then immediately it goes just batshit off the rails.
Yes.
And I was just in. Like, it was like, that's the perfect 1-2 punch of game for me.
The first world ends with the destruction, with the destruction of Japan. Japan gets messed up in this game. So I looked it up to confirm, but I mostly got it by the end because, well, I guess before we even get to the story, it's even though this game never released in the US until the Wii eShop, the entire thing is in English with Japanese subtitles. Like,
yes,
and the voice acting is shockingly decent.
Yeah. Like it's not good, but it's not
it's not good. No,
it's not native
good,
Japanese speakers speaking English like you would expect from a Japanese only game that we have all this. There's like a legacy around it being this import god of a game.
Yeah,
like these are. I don't know if they recorded it in the U.S., but it sounded like they had plans to release this, and then Nintendo of America was probably like, well, it's 2001. No.
Yeah, there was clearly a huge amount of work like that in this game. I mean, these guys are clearly proud of their work, right? Like this wasn't something that they just kind of slapped together and threw out there. I'm pretty sure that I saw mouth animations, so like I didn't expect that. The voice acting, I was blown away that it exists. It's pretty awful at times.
Yeah,
I mean the main male voice actor, he sounds like he's still learning to read phonetically. It's really painful. Like I did not have a good time listening to him, but I was shocked that it was there. And that's sort of, again, the core word I'm using here is just ambitious, right? Like it's very ambitious. Yeah. I think it's wild how this managed to make me feel like I'm just playing Star Fox 64, but still be completely refreshing at the same time.
Yeah. And another thing about the voice acting that I'll hit on is the fact that it doesn't sound crunchy like you'd expect from compressed. Like I'm guessing it's because the game is so short, that there's not a ton of, like they had extra, space on the cartridge after handling all their assets and using their compression techniques. But it sounds like not CD quality, but it's pretty close for the voice acting.
I thought it had to be like a new one, right? I thought it had to be a new voiceover for the Switch when I first heard it. I was like, wow, I can't believe they put in that extra work.
Yeah, I think Kevin's right about it being potentially getting ready for a U.S. release because it has Bill Trinan in the credits, like as a localizer or a translator. I forget the exact role he had, and it had Super Mario Club, and there's Nintendo of America. It's just like it looks like it was getting ready to be done, unless this was all put in there for the Virtual Console release. But it just like it was almost there, and they're like, it's a little too late. We're not going to bother.
Too late and too difficult a game, probably in Nintendo's estimation for American audiences. I could see, because that wouldn't be the first time we've heard that before. But probably more too late than anything, because I think they had already they were already ready to move on. Like the same thing with Animal Crossing wouldn't have worked in English anyway because of the amount of text. Like it took until last year for someone to have taken the original Animal Forest N64 and been able to fully translate it while not breaking the game.
Yeah.
So it could just be them saying, we're going to wait. Maybe we'll put it on GameCube, as a launch game. And then that didn't happen.
I can see how this game has a reputation for being wildly difficult, but I think a lot of that is trappings of the era that it came from, such as the continues system, right?
Yeah.
Where today's restore points eliminate that entirely. I don't think that this is a difficult game today, right?
No.
I think that you could very easily throw this in and be like, yeah, this was, there's some jank and, there's a couple of hard moments for sure where you're going to have to sit down and try. But it's sort of got that mobile game plateau thing, right? Where it gets a little bit harder and then it's easy for a while and it gets a little harder. And
Yeah.
And by the time you're at the end, you're pretty good at controlling your character, and I feel that you could go back and play it through again as you're intended to, first on an easy, then a normal, and, if there were a harder mode too, and do that kind of a thing.
And there is. Once you beat normal mode, you do unlock hard mode.
I think normal, there were like bonuses. I think normal unlocks the ability to have subtitles, which already exist. So I don't know if it's you can turn them off, maybe.
There were some options that you unlocked. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Since I beat it on easy, I didn't unlock anything like that. It was just like, you enjoyed the story. Good for you, type thing. Which is fine. It was. I didn't feel like it was a lesser experience on easy. I still died quite a bit on easy. But yeah,
I would even argue that it's intended that way, right? Like it starts you on easy in the options. It doesn't ask you what difficulty you want. It's just there you go. I think you were clearly intended to start this game on easy and get through it and then put it onto normal and go through it again. And because it's such a short experience, that's fine, right? Like I'm happy to do that. And you sort of learn these bosses and things, and you learn how to go through them and what to expect. And of course, there is the point system, because every time you continue, you lose your points. So you're intended to sort of have these long runs and get through, and get good, really, right? We've all mentioned, or I'm sorry, Kevin, you've mentioned, the Dark Souls-esque. I've mentioned Armored Core. I think Get Good is. You did. You said that. I feel like you did. I don't think did I.
I think you made up Dark Souls.
Hallucinate that. Okay. Well, the point is that the there because you said Get Good. That's where it came from.
Oh, okay.
There it is.
Fair. I understand.
The Dark Souls Get Good, mentality is certainly there, and I don't think that's bad at all. I think that it's a perfectly good experience to want to be good at something. You know what I mean?
It's the same vein as Star Fox, where you the better you do, the harder planets you go to. It's just you get a different experience each time. You don't get that different experience this one, but I part out there that the core experience is so wild that it still had the spectacle even when I played it through a second time. Like it did not get old just because it's
spectacle, man.
It's different, and I didn't get far enough to notice this, but normal and hard mode, according to the wiki, does feature extra bosses. So you'll get
that would make sense.
You get unique bosses as well.
Because I played on normal at first, and I think I would have made it through without having to use restore points. I only did at deaths, or at like where the checkpoint would put you. So every time I died, I would do a restore point and go there, or at the start of a level. But there were definitely times where like there were levels. I think the aircraft carrier level had like 7 boss fights in it, and they just kept coming, and I'm like, please God, I have 4 health. I just give me something.
Yeah.
Like,
It really is just hanging on, but they give you that time, and there was a couple times
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, I'm almost out of time, and
yeah, the elevator level did that for me. That little mini boss on the elevator halfway up. For some reason, that was like my skill gate for the game. Like that's where I got hung up the most early on, and it was just I think it was because I didn't realize I was running out of time, and so I was losing health constantly once the timer goes to 0. And it only clicked to me at some point later in the game that was what was happening because I just didn't even clock that.
yeah.
Yeah, and those boss fights are super unique, right? Every
Yeah.
single one of them. I mean, there was one bad guy who I think surrounded themselves with the corpses of dead cops and then threw it at you.
Yeah,
like a
the-
waterfall.
After the giant mech dog fight, which also
Which
messed
is
me
the
up.
hardest boss in the game for me.
That was rough.
That was.
I
really
didn't have too much difficulty with that one. I noticed pretty quickly they just like, oh, it's just a counter thing. It's not like the shooting is doing
Yeah.
nothing, but if you counter them at certain times, you can sort of
Yeah.
do a sumo thing where they go off the edge and does more damage.
Yeah, you got to knock him off the edge. That was the hardest boss for me, by far, is just pushing that dog off the side repeatedly.
Because he would like his AI would like counter you, like he would jump over you and then backflip, and I'm like, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to roll under you so I can Bowser you off the edge,
Yep.
and or I guess bully you off the edge more like than Bowser. But speaking of bullying someone off the edge, there was a point the fight at the end of before the big aircraft carrier level where you're fighting the little weird rat guy and
Oh, right.
and
Yeah,
the main villain for most of the game, I think. The end of that fight was wild to me because it's the part where you're doing a parry sequence against him and you're just doing like a classic Dragon Ball Z, just mash the button till you win against him, and you smack him into the window like 4 times in a row until he goes through. I was like, am I doing something wrong? I'm not going to stop because I will die. But I'm gonna keep doing it, and then he shatters through the window, and I was like I jumped up. I was like, oh, I'm into this. This is great.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Bullying poor Brad.
I still don't know who
That's
he
our villain.
was. I don't know why we were doing that. I don't know why we killed his pet dog squid.
So, looking at the plot on the wiki and just picking up some things again from the second playthrough and understanding it a little bit better. Basically, for whatever reason, your characters are just they're able to resist this, and they're sort of resistances to these military guys. Meanwhile, there are also monsters fight like that have popped up, and so the idea is to fight against the army because you're resisting them because they're like trying to institute martial law and things. And eventually you find out that your main character, Saki, has this beast blood in him, which is why he transforms, but he can't control it, which is why you go to the other character, I believe her name is Iron, and she works with that Achi as they're trying to get him back to normal, which is pretty much the second third of that game. It turns out this Brad also has the blood of those monsters in him, which is how he powers up his minions. And then you go through all that, you get Saki back, but it turns out this girl Achi, who is actually not from Earth, she's an alien because she's preparing Earth for a attack from aliens that will just absolutely conquer everything. So she's trying to make Saki into the ultimate weapon. And instead we just defeat her. It's something like that. I don't know. It's something wild.
It's like a little bit of Metal Gear in there and then a lot of Twilight. Like this,
Yeah.
if you really step back.
Yeah, especially because we have here's your protagonist. Here's your future son. Protect him.
Oh, it's Monkey Ball. Okay, now I'm in.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. I did look it up out of curiosity, and Star Successor on the Wii, you do play as that son. So it is an actual continuation where you're actually fighting the aliens that she was preparing you for, just as their son. So
fascinating.
That's cool. I'm into that.
Yeah, that's kind of like the whole thing, right? Like my review would be, this is all right. It was a good experience.
Yeah, like it's
Absolutely.
just the whole review is just pointing out cool moments. Like it's
Yeah.
that's what this game is. It's cool moments. It's a roller coaster ride.
It's treasure. This is peak treasure. Thing. Graphically, we should also mention these models are simultaneously shockingly good, but also oof at times. Like
Yeah.
they have an odd quality to them, like this roughness to them that is quite odd. Like their proportions are all so weird.
Yeah, the character design is definitely very unique. I didn't have a problem with it, but like I wouldn't say that any of them were particularly pretty, right? Like I don't think there's a single character in the game where it's like, oh, that's a really pretty character, but it doesn't look bad. It's just they have their own style for sure.
A lot of it is this is going to be a deep cut comparison here, but from what I read, it's similar to the issue that hit PS2 game Ratchet Deadlocked ran into, where they needed to compromise between the frame rate and the amount of stuff they wanted to pack into the game and the character models. So they had to make the models a lot like jaggier and a lot more polygonal. And so that's part of what led to like this unique hybrid visual design the game has. And somehow it really works. Like there's never any moment of slowdown. It just kind of works. I don't know that it's 60 frames per second, but you could fool me and say that it was.
Yeah,
Which is for an N64 game kind of wild because all of them ran at like 5 frames per second.
It's definitely one of the smoother N64 games to play, and I also really good balancing, I guess, on the control stick because I don't know if you've ever attempted to play Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask and have use the shooting controls with the analog stick on the Pro Controller. It is so touchy and hard to aim. Never had an issue with the Pro Controller on this game. Like it's somehow tuned really perfectly.
Point. Yeah, because I haven't played any of the Zelda games on Switch, but I did play them on the Wii U, shopping that at the same thing, where there was no way to manipulate the stick sensitivity or add stronger dead zones or anything, and that always destroyed me whenever I played any other version of Ocarina besides on an actual controller. So that's a really good point. I never even thought about it.
Yeah, it just felt immediately natural.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I unless there's any other cool moments we want to shout out for this, I think we've said all we wanted to say about Sin and Punishment.
I recommend it if you have the Switch Online or if you have a Wii that has the game downloaded for some reason still, or a Wii U. I mean, both shops are dead, so either way, figure it out. But no, I recommend it.
Yeah,
that was really good.
Yeah, so both two NSOs from you. Any other thoughts you wanted to give, Moriarty? Sorry.
No, I just because it's stuck in my brain, I'll say it, but I don't think anybody's going to understand it. When you were talking about the Ratchet and Clank graphics, right? The style that kept popping up in my head while I was looking at this game is an old game called Kingpin, which is an old 1999 shooter by like some company that doesn't exist
anymore. You've shown me this one. I think I know what you're talking about.
The models from that game and the models from this game are very similar. And if anybody has played those this game or Kingpin rather, I think they will agree with me, but not happily.
Nice. Agreement with you guys. This is such an easy recommendation. If you can just play the tutorial, get used to the controls, you're in for a good time for next 2-3 hours or so, depending on how much difficulty you have, and maybe even beyond that, because it is really easy to be like, I finished easy mode, I want to keep playing, I'm going to play normal mode, and who knows, maybe even to hard mode in its way. And it's gotten to the point. It's also the point where I picked up the sequel, Star Successor, on the Wii, but I never fully played it. It was the same sort of situation here where I played a little bit, but I didn't quite just go for it because I think the controls were just a little too different. I didn't put in the time, but it makes me really curious about that game now. I'm glad I have it.
Yeah, no, it's one that I definitely want to check out now, and it's always been on that list, but now I'm like, okay, if that game's half as batshit as this one.
It might
I'm
be
in.
more batshit
Yeah,
considering.
honestly.
It probably controls better because it's, nunchuck and Wii remote. So you got pointer controls and a nunchuck this time. So it's probably easier
Yeah.
controls.
I did read
Easily.
it has classic controller support as well, so you don't even need to use motion for it if you don't want to.
True.
Which is a huge win for anyone who doesn't want to deal with if their calibration's off or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So what about all of you? Have you played Sin and Punishment before, or was this your first time? And before we go, where can everyone find you at? Moriarty, plug away.
YouTube.com/really cool. And I most recently did a video about a game called The Outer Wilds. It's a 3-hour long look at the philosophy of the game.
Really good
Nice.
video from the bits I've watched before it gets into spoiler territory.
It does get a little spoilery, yeah.
Yeah.
It mixes me up. I believe I've played it. Is this the one that you're exploring space?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, because there's another one that's
Outer Worlds is fun.
Outer Worlds. That's it.
Yep.
I was like, couldn't mix them up. Outer Wilds takes a bit to get used to, but once you do, it gets your hooks in you.
It can stay with you long enough to make a 3-hour long philosophy video about it. Yeah.
That's awesome. What about you, Kevin?
You can find me everywhere on the internet at the Golden Bolt. You can also find Em and I together on our podcast if you go to @CrubOfficial on YouTube or any other platform, really, except for Twitch, where it's Crub_official. We do a podcast about games and similar things every Tuesday on Twitch, and then episodes go live on Friday. And we also do a bunch of dumb, weird game shows and a lot of talks like this combined with a lot of weird shit. So if you like this game,
if you like our dynamic, you get that half of the time.
yeah.
There you go. I like it. Well, thank you both for joining me. And if all of you joining us enjoyed this episode, let us know in the comments, and please consider supporting us at patreon.com/gvgaming, which includes our live audience tier that will allow you to watch Game Club live as it's being recorded. However, I do have an announcement to make, and that is the future of this show. Just to put it simply, I've been playing. This is my 46th game. Everybody else here has not played more. Every other guest I've had has not played more than 3 games on this list. I have played 46. I'm a little burnt out, so I'm going to put the show on a small hiatus, work out some technical issues behind the scenes to try to get those fixed, to make it a little easier to put together again, and we'll be back in the future for a season 2. Same fun guests, and same whole concept. I can fall even further behind as Nintendo adds more games to the NSO. It's all good times, but I just need a little bit of a break. It's a lot. So thank you for joining me for this almost year of season 1 of NSO Game Club. We'll be back at some point in the future. I will absolutely let everyone know when that happens, and we'll just start off the same way we started off with the first episode of season 1. So we'll just get that pick up and then go right for it. So thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, bye.